Good evening, members of. Who's got a device that's echoing? Try again. Good evening, members, officers, visitors, and members of the public. I'm Councillor Mike Baldock, and I'll be chairing this evening's meeting. The meeting will be recorded and proceedings will be conducted in accordance with the Council's constitution, including procedural rules which are available on the Council's website. Item 1. There are no planned evacuation drills this evening, and accordingly, if the alarm sounds, it is to be treated as a genuine need to evacuate. There are emergency exits. The main one is there. There's also emergency exits by the lifts where you came in. Please do not use the lifts, but use the stairs. On exiting, you will be directed to the assembly point, and it is important that you remain there and do not return to the building until I've announced that it is safe to do so. If anyone present will need assistance in evacuating, could you please inform me now so that we can make the necessary arrangements to assist you? The meeting has a semi-quasi-judicial role and determines the rights and obligations of the applicant. Members must consider each application and everything that is said in the meeting concerning the application and make their decision based solely on their planning judgment of the information available to them. To remind members now, if you wish to speak as a ward member, you would be asked to speak at the beginning and you will be absenting yourself from the committee for that item. If you wish to speak as a member of the committee, you will take part in the debate in the normal way. Following a decision by members, delegated authority is given to the planning officer to issue the decision notice. Planning permission is not granted or refused until the issue of that decision notice. Any member of the council who is not a member of the planning committee may attend as a visiting member and may speak having given prior notification. Such visiting members may of course include ward members, and whilst visiting members can speak on an application, they are not permitted to vote. Any member acting as a substitute on the planning committee must have undertaken appropriate training before doing so. Members must remain in the meeting for the whole time that each item is being debated and should not vote on that item unless they have done so. I would now like to welcome our public speakers and remind you that you have 3 minutes to speak and an audible warning of time will be given when there are 30 seconds remaining. If a meeting is deferred to conduct a site meeting, you may speak both at this meeting and at the site meeting, but there will be no further opportunity to speak on the matter when it comes back to the planning committee. The meeting actually will not follow the order set out in the agenda, so I shall come on to that in a minute. Agenda item 2, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. I have apologies for absence from Councillor Jays, who's substituted by Councillor Carnell.
Thank you. Any more? Okay, item 3, declarations of interest. And do any members have disclosable pecuniary interests under the Localism Act of 2011? No. Any disclosable non-pecuniary interests under the Code of Conduct? Councillor Speed.
Thank you, Chairman. For transparency, this application was discussed at a meeting of, one of the applications on the agenda was discussed at a meeting of Linstead with Kingsdown Parish Council, which I chair, last August, and the council resolved to submit a letter of objection, which was duly sent. However, I have an open mind and I will listen to all the evidence this evening before deciding how to vote. And for the avoidance of doubt, I will be participating in this meeting as a member of this committee and not addressing the meeting as a ward councillor.
Thank you. Any other DMPIs? Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to take item 2.1 first, which is application number 22/505990 full land. It's item 2.1, land between the A299 Staple Street Road and Whitstable Road, Graveney. You find that in your packs. It's page 235. And can I ask the officers for any updates?
There's one update to this application, and that is that both Herne Hill Parish Council and a neighbour, both of which you previously commented, have commented again to reiterate their previous comments. So there's no update to the report because those comments are contained within it and they're addressed within the report as well.
Okay, and I should have asked you if you can provide a summary as well.
Certainly will. So this is a application for temporary planning permission, the change of use of land for the provision of a marshalling compound for commercial vehicles, including a welfare cabin and creation of vehicular access and 40 staff car parking spaces. And it's for use in conjunction with the regulation of traffic, which is accessing the Cleve Hill Solar Park, which many members will be very aware of, which is in the borough. To take you through the particulars of the application itself. So the site itself is outlined here in red, and just for reference points, you have the A299, excuse me, Thanet Way along this side of the boundary, Whitstable Road running here to the north, and then the accesses are actually on Staple Street Road. And here's the aerial view of the site. See, it's contained within this site, which is bounded on all sides by existing planting. To give you just a bit of context in terms of the site in relation to the solar park, the site is right down here at the bottom of the page, just off the Thanet Way, as I was just saying. And the idea here is that it intercepts vehicles which are going to the solar park, which is at the north of the page. And what that does is that it allows HGV vehicles to park within the site, and then the existing roads are monitored in terms of when construction vehicles are off the route, and then one's released from the compound. In terms of a bit more detail about the site itself, these are the 12 HGV bays. This is an existing access into the site. This is a new proposed access. There's 40 staff vehicle spaces here, and there is a small welfare cabin located here, shaded in, hatched in red. Some elevations of the welfare cabin, which is a small scale and temporary structure. In terms of some photographs of the site, here's that existing access I was talking about. You can see the site itself, the internal site is not planted. The boundaries are. This is the existing junction. You've got Whitstable Road, Graveney Road along here. Then a view sort of going back down the other way towards Whitstable Road. Some more photos going into the site there. And this photo is the closest residential unit, which is approximately 65 metres away, which is to the north of the site, and the only real residential property that's affected by the proposal itself. These drawings are more technical in nature and essentially show tracking of vehicles to show that they can get in and out the site. We can look at them a bit closer if any member wants to. But in summary, the application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions that are set out in the report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I ask Mr. Steve Davies to speak on this as the agent, please? You have 3 minutes from when you press the large button with a star on. You'll have a 30-second warning. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I speak on behalf of the applicant and in support of the application. Cleve Hill Solar Park was granted consent in May 2020. Quinbrook acquired the site in the project in September 21 and immediately began the process of preparing for its construction. The consent for Cleve Hill Solar Park includes the requirement for a construction traffic management plan, a CTMP, with a series of measures designed to reduce the impact of construction traffic on the communities along the construction traffic route. The CTMP was submitted and subsequently approved by Swale Borough Council in September 22. The CTMP requires that the project team engages with local stakeholders, including Swale Borough Council, the parish council, the local primary school and other statutory bodies with responsibility for highways and access through regular meetings of a traffic management group, which has met regularly since October 2022. It became apparent during these meetings that additional controls above and beyond those included in the CTMP would be beneficial in terms of tracking and managing vehicles arriving and departing the A299 and travelling towards the site entrance through Goodnestone and Graveney. Subsequently, Quinbrook has procured tracking software and sought to identify an area of land on the construction traffic route between the A299 and Goodnestone in order to intercept HGVs travelling to and from the site and more closely schedule their movements. This land was quickly secured following the consideration of several parcels of land in the area of search and is the subject of this planning application. The construction of Cleve Hill Solar Park has commenced and since February 23 has been controlled by the CTMP. The Traffic Managed Group is supportive of the marshalling compound proposals and additional controls it will provide, and in recent meetings has expressed disappointment that it has not yet been put in place. There is clear local support for the facility. The head teacher of Graveney Primary School has stated in their letter of support the following. The school have agreed a traffic mitigation plan with Cleve Hill Solar Park and to minimise disruption during the build process. The measures in place include a 20-mile-per-hour limit on works HGV vehicles past the school and a complete ban on works HGV vehicles during the drop-off and pick-up times. The school attends regular meetings with the traffic management group and feels they have already ensured their complaints and concerns are being dealt with thoroughly and promptly. Whilst at present the convoys of HGV vehicles are all being escorted through the village, this is not a model solution. The Thanet waylay by where these vehicles are currently being held and released as a convoy is not ideal and means we have several lorries all travelling past the school together. The traffic marshalling compound will provide a much safer holding area and ensure that all heavy goods vehicles are actually tracked when passing through the village of Graveney. Following our discussion with the traffic management group, I feel very confident the proposed site at the end of Head Hill Road will ensure that the vehicles are managed well and keep the safety of the pupils within the school, as well as all road users and using this route as safe as possible. To conclude, you have before you a report recommending the application is approved. We respectfully request that members approve this temporary installation in order to provide the additional mitigation it will secure to the communities along the Cleve Hill Solar Park construction route. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any ward members online wishing to speak about this or any visiting members? Okay. What normally happens is I as a procedure, move the officer's recommendation, seek a seconder, but doesn't give any indication as to how I will actually vote on the item. Right, Councillor Booth.
Yeah, happy to second it for the
move.
expedite it.
Right, any speakers? Councillor Winkler.
Thank you, Chair. Got the officer just put some more pictures up. I have a picture up of the proposed access route.
Yeah, was it, sorry, the access or the access route?
The access into this proposed.
This is it here. It's an existing access which comes off of Staple Street.
Have we got any further pictures of the actual road that's leading into where those gates are? That's the junction.
This is the junction.
Junction there again.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Now, how many vehicle movements do they think will take place?
Well, that's controlled by the by a condition of the development consent order. This doesn't increase that, and it's 40 deliveries a day. So there's 80 movements, 40 there, 40 back. But that's not as part of this application. That's not going to be extended.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chairman. Could the officer give an indication of the width of the road at the junction where the HGVs are going to be turning into the site? And secondly, is the site access to be widened? The reason I ask this is because 8-wheel tipper trucks do take quite a lot of turning circle to get in and out of a junction, and I'm just concerned that if the access isn't going to be widened, they're going to make a right mess of the grass verges going in and out. Thank you.
Luckily for me, that figure's on the drawing, which is shown here is between 6.8 metres there and 7 metres there. terms of the access in and out, we've got these tracking drawings have been provided, which KCC Highways have assessed and assessed them as being acceptable to enter and exit the site in a HGV. I'm not a highway expert, so obviously we've considered those views of KCC Highways and given them a lot of weight in the process, but hopefully that helps in terms of those drawings there.
Okay, Councillor Henderson.
This is far from ideal, but then it's far from ideal to be building an enormous solar farm right next to a country road by the coast. But that has been approved, and so we need to say, well, how do we then make the best of it? And I think there are two important things here. The first is there's clearly been a good search for where is the best location to put this holding park, and clearly a holding park is a good concept. And secondly, is the land, when it's finished with, going to be restored? And the answer to that is yes, it is. So it would appear to me that while, as I say, it's far from ideal, it is, in my view, acceptable, and it will be most important in 5 years' time to see that the land is properly restored to grade 1 agricultural land. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Just quick clarity. On page 239, one of the concerns raised by residents is about noise pollution. They've asked for an extension of the acoustic fencing. I noticed that the lighting issue has been addressed. I couldn't see anything about the acoustic fencing. I might have missed it. Could you just clarify?
Yeah, we've consulted environmental health, and they're of the view that acoustic fence isn't required. The only noise attenuation feature will be a small barrier related to generators, but not in terms of the entirety of the boundary of the site itself. So their environmental health are happy that there's not one needed in this case. I think the background noise of the A299 is a sort of contributing factor to that.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Actually, Councillor Henderson answered my questions that I had in my head, so it's okay. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no more, Councillor Booth.
Thank you, Chairman. Page 248, item 10. You've made mention, Chairman, for the acoustic fencing. Can the officer identify on the drawing the proposed location and the nearest household to where that will be? Then I will carry on, Chairman.
Yeah, sure.
There is no item 10 on page 248. 246.
Right, it's 248 on the internet copy. Do love it when we get pages muddled.
Can you is that clear on the screen?
This is on the condition, yeah. Any static noise source from the marshalling compound, e.g. the generator, shall be provided with an acoustic barrier.
Yeah.
So where is that on the?
Well, that, can you see that exactly?
On the map.
The house is right to
So as the crow flies, how far?
65 metres.
65 metres, okay. I suppose as far as a condition is concerned, that's the only one that can't be tied up yet. dependent on what size generator and how cheap they want to buy it as to how noisy it will be, I suggest. On the matter of the parking, can you let us know how many electric charging points they've allowed for?
0. That's mentioned at paragraph. Bear with me.
Is there any reason why it's 0? I mean, we're all pressed to go a lighter shade of green.
Yeah. Yeah, in paragraph 8.11, it mentions the lack of EV charging points and how this is, as you said, normally a requirement. The reason being is because it's a temporary permission, is that we've not considered it reasonable to impose that condition in this case.
Okay, the only concern I have with respect is having seen temporary applications before. I know we can only look at what we've got today, but temporary applications do have a habit of being extended. So a 5-year application today, again, we can only deal with what we've got, but I'm not happy that it's 0 to start with. And with regards to the, how do they term it, the building, the compound, I can't see a condition there that would state categorically that it cannot be inhabited. I'm just conscious that, again, history does come back and slap us. That we have a temporary building on there. Sorry.
That's sorry. That would need separate permission. So there's obviously various things that this can't be used for. It can only be used for what we're giving it permission for. Anything that falls outside the terms of that and needs a separate planning permission would need to go through that process.
So are we able to specifically condition it that it can't be habited? People can't live in it, shall we say?
We could do.
I would recommend that is put in there. Again, monitoring of buildings that are used for this particular function. It's very difficult after the horse has bolted to keep an eye on it. I'd like to see that in there, please.
Is that proposal?
It is, Chairman.
I'm happy to second that. Are we happy to include that as a condition? Councillor Henderson.
Can I just? Okay. Can I just pick up a question on that? Mr. Gregory has quite clearly said it is already conditioned because it can only be used for the things we have approved it for. Is it not an unnecessary belt and braces to condition it in the other direction?
Don't believe it is, Chairman.
Don't see the harm in it. Okay. Can we have a vote? Those in favour of including that condition, please indicate. And those against? 3. Those against, yeah, as Councillor Martin is against. And abstentions? 1. Okay, so that is now the substantive motion. Any other questions? Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. I know no proposals put forward, but just a concern with the charging points. If there was any increase in that, I assume that there's a generator on the site because there's no electric supplied to the site. And if you start putting points in to charge cars, it means a bigger generator and more noise for the housing nearby. So it's just a caution. If you do start asking for things like that, could actually cause other problems and need further looking at. But I assume that's why, if the officer can just clarify that, that is what the generator is for, to provide electric to the site.
Paul, would you like to clarify that?
I believe it is, yeah, without being 100% sure.
Councillor Booth.
Yeah.
Can I just remind you that I didn't get through my last agenda. I would hate to have to another adjournment, but carry on, Councillor Booth.
It's solely in your hands, Chairman. The only thing I would say is there's mention of site lighting on there. So is the lighting only going to be run by the generator, in which case it'll only be running during the daylight hours, which seems a little bit of a nonsense.
Paul, are you able to answer that?
Sorry, but could you repeat that question, please?
Yeah, is there site lighting? So once the site's been vacated, you've got hours of 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. and then 6:30 p.m. till 7:30 p.m. It all gets a bit confusing then for Saturdays, but
Okay.
if that lighting is to be operated by the generator, that's a question, please.
Yes, paragraph 8.20 in the report is dedicated to lighting. It says that there is lighting likely to be required, and what there is in the list of conditions is a condition requiring the submission of a lighting plan. Again, the exact source of the power, I believe, is the generator.
Okay, if there's no other contributions, can I see? Oh, sorry, Councillor Thompson.
It's noted that it's for a solar park at Cleve. Why have they not got a temporary solar structure for their lighting and not a generator? It's a little bit odd. And there's lashings of room there. And with battery storage via the vehicles, they don't need a generator. So I'm just wondering why they've got a generator.
Paul, do you know the answer?
There are solar panels actually proposed on the roof of the welfare building in this application, but that's sort of quite technical in nature in terms of knowing exactly what the generator is required for. What we need to do, I think, as a planning authority, is assess whether the impact of the generator is acceptable or not, which is what we've done, what Environmental Health have commented on.
Just the fact that if it's running 24/7, we've got some sort of responsibility to not have that, and it doesn't need to be there. So it just requires a little more effort from the company to say we'll fit temporary solar structure with battery storage. I don't understand why it's there. That's all.
Councillor Thompson, if you look at proposed condition number 11 on page, well, written page 246, might be different on your phone. It says battery packs will be used as a means of power supply during the non-operational hours of 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. hour on weekdays and 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. on Saturdays. Okay. If there's no more comment, can I see those in favour of the officer's recommendation, please show. I think that is unanimous. Thank you. We'll now take deferred item 2.2. Which is 22/503418/out, Sittingbourne Land at Tong Road. Just trying to get the page number. 169. Can I invite the planning officer to provide a summary and update on the application, please?
Apologies. Thank you, Chair. As you mentioned, this item relates to land at Tong Road. The scheme was initially considered at the 25 January 2023 Planning Committee, where it was resolved to defer the item to enable members to undertake a site visit. and the site visit was undertaken on the 21st of February. This slide just shows an aerial of the site, which is outlined in red, essentially triangular in shape and located between the railway line and Tong Road. Slide just showing the red line site. Outline approval sought for 16 dwellings. All matters are reserved apart from access. The slide shows a parameter plan which indicates access points into the site and the locations of building frontages. The yellow area is where development would be located, and you can see, I guess you'd say towards Tong Road, you can see the sort of the wire outline, which is where they're suggesting would be the frontage of buildings. Slide shows an illustrative layout. While it's simply illustrative, it does depict one way the development could come forward. The actual layout would be determined at the reserve matters stage. There's a photo of the northwest corner of the site looking from Tong Road, so looking towards the south across the site. A further image from further along Tong Road towards the east, looking from Tong Road across the site to the south. So sort of at the end of this photograph, you can see what we would say is the railway embankment. Just to highlight, when I went back through the minutes relating to the working group site visit, concerns were raised at the site meeting over the possibility of residents from the proposed development parking directly on Tong Road. The Highway Authority has therefore requested a condition be imposed on any consent to require the developer to enter into the traffic regulation order process, and that condition is recommended. The Highway Authority also clarified the need for the off-site highway works. So, for example, they're going to widen Tong Road and put a footpath in on the side which would adjoin the development. And we're recommending those conditions to make sure that that's picked up. The Highway Authority also, and this is all post the site visit, came back to clarify that some obligations relating to crossings and quiet lanes are now not required. And so it's recommended that we don't seek those obligations from the heads of terms. What I would also note, Chair, is the tabled update to this committee report. As part of the committee documentation on the 25th of January committee, there was a tabled update. This highlighted a need for a financial contribution towards refuse and recycling bins, and that the NHS had come back to clarify that the size of the development was not sufficient to trigger a need for a contribution towards healthcare. And those changes are reflected in the tabled update from 25 January, and I've reflected in the tabled update for this evening. There are also changes to the wording of some conditions which are recommended to remove duplication and just to make sure that they're precise. And finally, Chair, this is a slide which shows it's a technical drawing relating to the accesses and the road widening. There have been some ongoing discussions with Kent County Council's Highway Department, and this is the outcome of that. These are now drawings which have been agreed by the Highway Authority in relation to the road widening and access. And as a result, I'm recommending that this plan reference number be reflected on any planning permission. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Do we have any visiting members who want to speak on this? Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Chairman. Be brief on this. I was at the committee back in January where it was eventually deferred. I was a sub for that night. I know you've had a site meet or site visit on there. I'm concerned that in terms of the road width, road widening, where the actual width increases are going to be. I presume it's going to encroach on the land that's formed part of this development, because those who know, I think most of us here know Lomas Road or that particular area. I just don't believe that that's wide enough for a refuse vehicle or anything of that ilk to be able to turn into that site. And if you do, I think that you then go into the realms of asking the question about in terms of road safety and the number of vehicles travelling down that particular area and the increased volume of traffic. And that's only 16 houses. I don't think that's particularly suitable. And then coming even further down towards where there's a crossing where school pupils cross at the moment, that floods very, very frequently. And I couldn't see anything on there that would mitigate against that for people. I mean, I was driving down there just last week and had to spend 20 minutes waiting for two vans, not lorries, vans, to try and pass each other. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but probably more educated minds here will deal with that. But I've got real reservation that I don't think it's suitable. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Can the officer clarify whether or not the land that's being set aside or used for the footpath is from the developer's land or if it's from the current highway?
So it would encroach into the development site. So in other words, the developer's having to sacrifice some of their land to provide the footpath and the road widening. Just Chair, through you.
Sorry, can we, the officer speaking. Please carry on.
Just to highlight that as part of the highway analysis, tracking diagrams were done looking at whether refuse vehicles and fire engines would be able to get in and out of the site at the proposed access ways. And just to confirm, with the road widening, yes, they are able to do that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'll formally move the officer's recommendation. Seconded Councillor Booth. Councillor Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. I was there at the site visit and actually brought up that subject that Councillor Bowen had actually was talking about regarding refuse vehicles and the fact that the road widening is only going to go up to a point where it comes back down to a narrow or the same width where there's public crossing there from one village to the other, one site to the other. Now, it was proposed that the refuge vehicles were not going to turn into the site and their bins were going to be put on the corner, thus virtually blocking that road off completely. But they seem to think that no, a refuge vehicle could park on the road and other vehicles could go past it. Well, while we were there, we witnessed the complete opposite of that. And as Councillor Bowen said, one van coming one way, another going the other way, it stops all the traffic. It is totally unsuitable for the width of that road. And they have no intention of widening the road. They're just going to put a footpath there. That was what we was told at the meeting by the agents.
Okay, Councillor Hall.
Well, Chairman, I thought the ward councillor had the priority of speaking first.
You can, as I explained earlier, you can speak as a ward councillor or you can speak as a member of this committee. If you'd have spoken as a ward councillor, you wouldn't have been able to take part as a member of the committee.
I'd like to point out a few things about this road. There's a 70 mile per hour sign just at the crossing before the proposed entrance. 70 miles an hour all the way along to Tong Village. Now, how at the moment children going to school at this crossing with their parents are living in fear because there's no vision display either. 70 mile an hour, and they want to build houses along there. How they're going to get people across the road, I don't know what they're going to do. It's like a racetrack at the moment. All day long, there's cars speeding along there. There's been 3 fatalities in the last 20 years. Yeah, it's a long span. 2 children died. 1 teenager died. There is no footpath at present along this narrow road. One other point is that for 3 years I've been pushing for a zebra crossing to help the children get across to go to school. This was blatantly refused by Kent County Council. At the last meeting we had here, suddenly decided we're going to put a zebra crossing here if we get this development approved. I find that very strange. At one time, our ex-Kent County Councillor Jason Clinch paid £1,000 for a design for the zebra crossing. God knows what happened to that money. No one's ever told me. I just hope that members will realise that this road is 70 miles per hour. Thank you very much.
Can we, officer, clarify the position regarding the zebra crossing? Because I understand that you've now decided it's not necessary.
The Kent Highway Authority came back to clarify that they don't feel that that's necessary. Their strength of feeling was such that they said that they would not accept funding for that. It's not in their program, so we're not seeking it on the basis that the Highway Authority wouldn't deliver a pedestrian crossing.
Councillor Winkliff.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, two previous speakers have already raised their concerns about which I was going to do, so I won't basically repeat that. I would just like to say yes, I have grave concerns with the visibility of that road.
Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, I wasn't particularly going to speak on this, but I'm confused by 2 points that have been made or questions asked. The first was that the road is not going to be widened, and that was apparently, so we're told, said at the site meeting. But I thought I saw clearly that the road was to be widened to 5.5 metres. And secondly, the comment that it is a 70-mile-an-hour speed limit. Well, it can't be, because it's not a dual carriageway.
Okay, can we have clarity on the road widening, please?
So there is a road widening scheme. It is limited in extent. It goes across the site frontage. It doesn't extend further east or west than that. And so there's this road widening scheme, and they also need to deliver a footpath on the side of on the south side of Tong Road, adjoining the development.
But that is in addition to the road widening.
Chair, I'm just going to check that now on the plan. Yes, Chair, the road will be 5.5 metres wide, and then in addition to that is this footpath that I'm talking about.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Councillor Hunt.
Thanks, Chair. Got a lot of experience with zebra crossings in Sonora Fields, but it is a concern that in this case, a zebra crossing is wanted, has been spoken about for years. The residents want it. For KCC to say that they agree that they would accept some funding for it, and then turn around and say that actually now they don't want to take that money, doesn't surprise me. KCC are pretty useless at the moment. But I still think that zebra crossing can be achieved, and if KCC don't want to accept funding for it, we should be asking the developer to install it, and the same as they've done on Sonora Fields under a Section 278 agreement. That should be part of the Section 106, I think it is, and I propose that condition is included to say that a zebra crossing needs to be implemented by the developer and details submitted to the planning authority in the interest of highway safety. I think it's those new residents that are going to be in that development are going to have to be crossing the road, as well as existing residents. So that should still be installed. in my view.
Thank you. I'll be happy to second that, depending on the officer's advice.
But
If we can do it.
probably the only thing that I'm worried about is so that Kent have, because they're the highway authority, Kent have to agree to allow the developer to put it in. And if they won't, then then the developer wouldn't be allowed to put it. Like if Kent won't agree, then it wouldn't be, it's their call, as it were, because they're the highway authority.
Cheryl?
Thank you, Chair. Just to reiterate what Mr. Dygan said, the section 278, you could require enter into a 278 through the section 106 or through a condition. The 278 is a form of contract between the developer and the County Council Highways Department. If the County Highways Department doesn't want a zebra crossing and the developer's conditioned to put in a zebra crossing through a section 278 agreement, it's going to be difficult for them to be able to discharge that condition. You would then have to question whether or not that condition met the tests in terms of reasonableness. And I have actually got first-hand experience of a very similar situation. It's a Maidstone situation where a 278 was secured on condition through a planning appeal. It required certain highway works to be undertaken by a certain trigger point. The developers put that 278 application into the County Council for the works that were required per the approved plans per the public inquiry, and the County Council have refused the section 278. They won't enter into it. They won't allow the developer to do the works. So there's a bit of an impasse now. So we do have to be very careful to make sure that if we are conditioning something, that condition is reasonable and is enforceable and meets the tests. And as Mr. Dygan has said, it's going to be quite difficult to force the developer to do something that requires them either to do it to a highway specification and highways won't sign off, or to get the Highways Authority to do it. Thank you.
But if we don't put that condition, there's zero chance of getting it. Councillor Hunt, do you wish to continue with your proposal?
Yeah, I'll still continue with what's on there. I think it is reasonable. I think if it wasn't reasonable, KCC wouldn't have asked for it in the first place. So there must be some reasonable. Can we just clarify, though, the reasons why KCC have removed it? Because from what I understand, I think it was a case of that they didn't want to take the funding to do the work rather than that it wasn't needed or wanted.
Can we have clarity on that?
So just to be clear, the Kent County Council Highways team did never ask for that pedestrian crossing or quiet lane contribution. That was put forward by the borough. Because they didn't ask for it initially, and they don't have a program that it would fit into, and they don't feel it's necessary, their advice to me is that we should not be imposing those planning obligations and probably should not have initially in any event.
Councillor Hunt.
Okay, thanks. So in that case, from what Cheryl said, the difference between putting it as a condition and putting it as a section 106, because if it's a section 106, then there's a legal agreement to provide it, but then KCC need to be part of the 106 agreement to make that decision. And would that then be better than a condition, making it as a 278?
Cheryl?
It's all much of a muchness, to be honest. Section 106 obligations, again, have to meet tests under the SIL regulations, regulation 122. And so the real only difference between the two ways of dealing with it would be the enforcement options that you have available to you in the event that that obligation or that condition was not adhered to. I think you still find yourself in a difficult position requiring the developer to do highway works, because the developer, like anybody else, can't just turn up and start doing works to the highway. They don't have the authority to do so. We see it, people with very, very good-hearted reasoning for doing it, filling in potholes, for example, of their own volition, and then the Highways Authority coming along and taking all the fill out of the hole and putting the hole back, because it's not in accordance with highway regulations. You need a permit to work on the highways. If the Highways Authority don't want a crossing, it's going to be very, very, very difficult to provide a crossing.
Councillor Hunt.
said KCC are just stupid at the moment. I think going down the route, we all know they want a zebra crossing. If KCC, they're not going to agree to it if they have already said that they're not going to do it. So I think we are probably wasting our time, as with anything with KCC, and needs a bigger thing to get things sorted out, I think.
Cheryl.
Just a suggestion to the committee, rather than putting it on as an obligation in the section 106 or on a condition, particularly on this application, but in recognition of the fact the committee are clearly concerned that they feel there is a need for a zebra crossing here, would it be possible for councillors, for example, to petition the Joint Transportation Board on this point and to try and push it through that way?
Well, I'm sure we can try. You may have a little more faith in its abilities than the rest of us, but we can certainly try that. Okay, I'm going to move it. See what the members think on the proposal for a zebra crossing. Councillor Hall.
Having to go back on part of the zebra crossing and the funding. Jason Clinch was the Kent County Councillor that paid £1,000. He was requested to do this by Sarah Elcock, who was the highways officer at the time. She said, if you put £1,000 in principle, we'll get it designed. And she told me on the telephone that had been approved. I waited months and months for this, and I get in touch with the highways again. They said the offer had been declined. They're not the zebra crossing. So what happened to the £1,000 that was paid for the design and the agreement in principle to that? I don't know if you can look into this.
Cheryl?
With respect to you, Councillor Hall, that's not a matter for the planning committee. Yeah, I know nothing of that. I don't know the history of that. I don't know the dates, the details. You know, it could be that an officer said that money was forthcoming, but that money was never forthcoming without asking KCC to look into that. That's really the only way that you'd be able to investigate that. But it's not a matter for the committee this evening for this particular application.
Can Councillor Booth?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just for clarity, can the officer identify where the nearest pedestrian crossing is? There's a method to my madness. And also, what is the speed limit at the proposed junction?
But just for clarity, which speed limit relating to which junction, or just past the site, do you mean?
The new junction.
Past the site. And I'll just have a look for the pedestrian crossing as well.
Thank you. If I may, Chairman, I totally concur with Councillor Hunt's commentary. I think I wasn't here, but I've read the documentation, and the committee made it very clear of its desire to have a crossing there. I would be very concerned if KCC Highways are not in favour of it purely for the financial reason, as I would suggest this is a safety reason, and I don't believe one can put a price on safety. So we need to be very careful with that. But yeah, I welcome the knowledge on the speed at the site and the nearest crossing, which I hope there isn't.
Do you have that yet?
Not to hand.
Okay, whilst you're looking, Councillor Stephen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. At the site meeting, they proposed that to restrict the speed limit to 40 miles an hour there at that point. But where the widening stops is exactly the place where there is a crossing. When I say crossing, there's a fence and a gap where they come out of the estate and cross the road at that point, and that is the narrowest point. Now, they can't widen that point because there's a public footpath and a wall. So the widening of the road will increase the speed of the traffic. We all know that happens. And you're coming back down to the narrow width where the crossing is at present. And there's no way of them changing that position because of the nature of where the houses are and the footpath is. So a crossing at that point would slow things down no end and would be big safety bonus to that point in the road. As it stands at the moment, the speed limit's 60 miles an hour. It's a cycle route as well. I've seen them going up there, and even passing in a car when another car coming the other way, it's dangerous. So I think I go fully with Councillor Hunt's suggestion that we push one way or another for a crossing at that point.
Councillor Hall.
Yeah, thank you for letting me come back in. Just to let you know that each morning and afternoon, perhaps 3-4 times a day, 150 children cross that road. And there's cars speeding at 60 miles an hour. As I said previously, it's like a racetrack. 150 children. Keep that in mind.
Okay, does the officer have the update on that?
Thank you, Chair. As you head from the west to the east, just as you go past the All Saints Road.
Yep. Do we have a map?
I can share my screen. So this is the intersection of Tong Road and All Saints. And then as you move, I'm saying this is probably about 20 or 30 metres. You can see there's like the open road, 60 mile an hour. If I just go past that and turn around, you see that coming the other way, like if you were coming from the east heading west, you then, after you've travelled past the site, you enter into a 30 mile an hour zone. But what I guess the point that you're wanting to make was the speed that people can travel at when they go past the site, and that's 60 miles an hour. And then in terms of the crossing, and I've looked around the front of the site and beyond the site to the west and the east, and I can't see a zebra crossing, not close by.
Councillor Clark.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Could the officer put up a picture of where the site is? I wasn't at the site visit and I'm not 100% familiar whereabouts along Tong Road this is.
It's just to the right of the underpass under the railway.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, well, in that case, I think I can answer Councillor Booth's question. The nearest actual pedestrian crossing would be Snips Hill. As far as I'm aware, there's no other zebra crossings or pedestrian crossings anywhere near. There's buttons on the traffic lights at Snips Hill. Buttons there. My other comment is it's the same with the next deferred item we're going to talk about. I mean, I understand that it is perfectly permissible and perfectly legal for developers to put in for outline permission with all matters reserved for a different day and date. But it still irks me that developers would do this. Why can't a developer come forward with a piece of land and come forward with a full application at the time of committee meeting or application? All this is, to my mind, is a way of extending their time that they can get to start building on the site.
Okay, I'm going to take an indicative vote. What do people want to see a condition put in about a zebra crossing? Is this to speak? Those in favour? Okay, that's quite clear. Councillor Hunt, would you like to move your proposal again?
I already moved it, you seconded it, so it's already on the floor.
You did kind of withdraw it, but if you didn't.
I didn't withdraw it.
Okay then.
But just to clarify that it is the condition that I stated, and at the end of the day, if KCC disagree, then the applicant will have to come back and change the condition.
Okay, those in favour of adding such a condition, please indicate. Those against? Abstentions? 2. Okay, so that is now part of the substantive motion. Does anybody wish to say, Councillor Hunt?
Thanks. I also mentioned the speed as well, because it says on the condition that there's highways drawings. None of the highways drawings that I can see say anything about that speed limit. I think it was mentioned about the site visit with a 40-mile-per-hour limit, but that would be silly to go 30, 40, and then into 60. And I think as part of those drawings, we should be making sure that it's 30 throughout that whole area past the development. So that 30 limit is extended. How that's done again with KCC highways, I don't know, but I can't see anything on any drawings that would show anything about speed.
Michelle?
Thank you, Chair. Speed limits and things like that would need to be amended through traffic regulation order process, and that's separate legislation. So you need to be very careful about conditioning that or putting it into a section 106. You can't require that to be delivered. All you can require is an application to be made, because it's a separate process and the outcome is obviously not certain. So we could potentially condition the requirement for the applicant to enter or apply for a traffic regulation order, which I believe is already a condition proposed for in terms of weighting restrictions. So that could potentially be broadened out if the committee saw fit to include a separate a TRO application for speed restrictions. But obviously, again, it's an uncertain situation. You can't require that they reduce the speed limits because it's done under separate legislation. Thank you.
Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, thanks for that. Sorry, yeah, that was my thinking. It would be a TRO, and that condition is in there. I'm just trying to find it again, but I'm sure the officer will know which one it is. And maybe that could then be included for the TRO to include the speed limit. And again, that's 20. Condition 23, highways works 2. We include it within that. And again, highway safety, it seems silly to have that 60 limit at that point. It should be past the development or whatever stage is picked up as being a suitable location.
Okay. Can I ask the officer to come in?
It's Chair, it's just to say, because Swale's not the local highway authority, it is a bit beyond our control to, like, we can't make Kent agree to change the speed limit or to introduce the zebra crossing. I guess the only thing would be, so the developer will try to discharge the conditions, and it is highly likely that Kent would not agree to allowing the speed restriction or to the implementation of the pedestrian crossing. They're just not quite sure. There would need to be some way that if the developer legitimately tries to address it and is frustrated from doing so by the highway authority, who are the arbiters of the highway, there needs to be some way out for that developer, because we've sort of put them in an impossible position.
They can come back to this committee and ask for discharge of a condition or a condition to be removed.
They do that through a section 73. There are tests for conditions though, and if I ran through, I do have a bit of a concern that the conditions wouldn't be necessarily passing the tests. So if the developer challenges them, then they would fall away.
Okay. Councillor Henderson. Can you?
Made it quite clear that we can require that the developer puts in an application to reduce the speed limit. And if that application isn't granted, then it falls. So why are we not simply agreeing to do that?
That would be my understanding as well.
Yeah, we could put a condition on that's requiring the applicant by whatever trigger the committee determines to make an application to KCC, and in the event that that application is approved by KCC, that those works are subsequently carried out in accordance with the agreement that KCC has given. Wording terms, I'm sure the officers can come up with a far better worded version of that than I have. But in principle, a condition to require the developer to apply, and in the event that that application is successful, to then carry out the works in accordance with that approval. Thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
I just wondered if the officer dealing it could tell me if there's any street lighting that's allocated. I haven't been able to spot that.
I don't think there is there? No.
No.
It will be within the site, but there's not street lighting being proposed as part of the off-site highway works.
Okay.
Okay, so the proposal is to amend condition 23.
Yeah, and just to clarify on that, the wording is already there because it says thereafter the development shall be implemented in accordance with the outcome of the traffic regulation order application. Depending with that, from the way I read that is if it's approved, then it goes ahead. If it's not, it doesn't. So that covers it. But just, I guess the wording of that is just needs to be altered to prior to above ground works, an application shall be made for a traffic regulation to introduce weighting restrictions on both sides of Tong Road, between All Saints Road and eastern end of development site, and reduction of speed limit, or however officers want to word that.
An introduction to 30-mile-an-hour speed limit.
Yeah, just including it within that, and then it's all covered.
Okay, I'm happy you second that. Any discussion on that? I saw hands. Are those in favour, please indicate. Yeah, that's carried unanimously. For the amendment 23. Okay, back to the substantive motion again. It really is a shame that we do not get the support of KCC to help making good placemaking, isn't it? Yeah, maybe we should bring this up at the JTB. If there's no more discussion on the substantive, we've already voted on the zebra crossing. Yeah, the substantive, they are now part of the substantive motion. Right, yep, so those in favour of the substantive motion, please indicate. Those against? Abstentions? Those who haven't put their hand up? There's one missing, isn't there? Sorry, what were you? What was your vote? 4. That's the extra one. Okay, that motion is passed. I have a suspicion we might hear more of that one. Right, we're now moving to deferred item 1. There is legal advice that will be handed out shortly on this, which is likely to mean that we will take a vote on whether or not to go into camera because of the sensitivity of the legal advice. I will take the officer's update and all public speakers and anybody who wishes to speak on this item, and then there will be a 20-minute break for members to read the legal advice, and then it will be down to members whether or not they wish to go into camera or not. If we don't go into camera, you cannot refer to the legal advice in asking questions or making statements. If you wish to make reference to the legal advice or legal commentary, then we will have to go into basically we have to remove the public and the press and everybody. So those are the options. That's the way forward. Can I first ask the planning officer to update us and give a summary of deferred item 1, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Just before we start, there's a slight typo in the brief report before you, which is contained within the discussion element. Paragraph 2.1. Towards the end of that paragraph, it says this has been successfully demonstrated by virtue of only 168. That should read 212 dwellings, and that number of dwellings is consistent within paragraph 1.3 of the same report. It should have been 212 dwellings rather than 168 dwellings. Thank you, Chair. So this is a deferred application. I outlined submission for up to 380 dwellings, including affordable homes, 450 square metres of commercial floor space, together with open space and landscaping land west of Church Road, Bapchild Tong. This is the reason why it was deferred from the committee on 25th of April, sorry, 25th of January last. Obviously, legal opinion in terms of proposed refusals, and in terms of the impact of some safeguarded land for the delivery of the Sydney-Bourne Relief Road, and that the layout would result in poor design, resulting in a cul-de-sac form. Since the deferment, the application is now subject to a non-determination appeal, and as such, members are required to consider the decision that they would have made should the council have been the determining authority. So the determining authority now is the planning inspectorate rather than the local planning authority. But just briefly, this is the aerial photograph of the site showing existing housing to the southwest of the site, with the existing Eurolink commercial area to the northwest, the existing roads to the south at Lomas Road, and to the east is the Grade 1 listed church. This is the proposed layout, which was before you when those that were on committee back in January of this year. This is the proposed layout that was before you at that time, showing the configuration of the site and its surroundings and its general disposition throughout the site. Amongst your papers, you will also have the original report that went to 25th of January committee. It is a very long report, but what I would do is draw members' attention to the planning, balance and conclusion elements of that report, which is found in the paper copy at least at page 127. I think it's probably 115 online, which draws all the various elements together in terms of the reasons why officers are looking to support the development of this allocated site and why it's deemed to be policy compliant. I would also draw members' attention to the proposed financial contributions as set out within the report. Again, in paper copy, it's 131, I think it's 118 online. And further, I would draw your members' attention to the updates that was provided to members in January, which is titled Late Sheets, 25th January, which provides updates on certain aspects of that report, and I would also draw that to members' attention. So in summary, members, the application and conclusions of the officers remain as valid as they were previously, and it's it's recommended that if members were in a position to deal with this application, they would support the application subject to conditions and the completion of a satisfactory Section 106 agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask Jill Beer, Councillor Jill Beer, if she's speak, please. You press the large button with a star, and when you do that, you'll have 3 minutes and you'll have 30 seconds notice.
Good evening, fellow councillors. It's lovely to see some of you again. This is going to be a very tough decision for you. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having meetings with lawyers and things. However, we have two main objections to this development. Firstly, for our residents in Heron Fields. If you look at your report and planning committee from the 25th of January, item 12.52 says the MU2 allocation of the site was made on the assumption that the Northern Relief Road would go ahead, and if not, the agreed 106 houses would not be built, as this would create problems for Great East Hall and Heron Fields by creating a giant cul-de-sac, one way in, one way out. Interestingly enough, it is already a cul-de-sac with or without the Relief Road, and colleagues will explain about that. The Northern Relief Road is not guaranteed. And if it doesn't happen, we're surprised to see, don't panic, because there's proposed an extra 380 houses come in and another 14 for the next application. 394 houses that shouldn't be there. Current journeys are a nightmare. And again, a colleague will talk about that, particularly as they try to reach Sittingbourne. This is where we have a conflict between our experiences of the traffic out there by just looking through the window, going down Lomas Road and trying to navigate the Eurolink Road. And yet the statistics are proving differently. You know what it's like going down there. So we went down and spoke to the businesses. They're talking about it's a gridlock for them, absolute mayhem. They're trapped at work and can't get out. Deliveries in and out of those businesses are being delayed. If you read social media, well, don't, because what they think about our ability to plan what's going on out there and our traffic is awful. However, the destination trip data that we're looking for doesn't show this, and KCC have no objection based on this data. So we know something is going seriously wrong with that data and what we are experiencing and what our residents are experiencing. So we've looked at the data, at the destination data measurement, and actually it's looking at A to B, but not timing it. So they are not picking up what's going on out there in our gridlocks with our traffic queues. So we're asking you, please, can you reconsider this and support us in our objection to this application? And thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask that Roland Brass, please, speaks, the applicant? Are you happy for some of your water to be had, Councillor Henderson? That's good. Your 3 seconds start, or 3 minutes starts now.
Good evening, members, and thank you, William, for the presentation. I'm Roland Ross. I'm from Knight Frank's planning team. I'll speak to you on behalf of Trendport, the applicant for this scheme. As we said, we were last here in February when the application was deferred. We're really pleased to be here again tonight. Really keen to get a decision tonight. As you will be aware, we have now submitted an appeal against non-determination because the council did not previously determine this application. We now needed a decision to inform the appeal process, which is programmed to go to inquiry in September. The appeal route is definitely not our preferred way to bring forward new homes, and neither is it the purpose of the planning system for allocated sites. We'd much rather get a consent from you. However, we have received legal advice stating that we should pursue the appeal and that our chances of success of the appeal would be very good. We're conscious the council has also sought its own legal advice, and we would assume that it reaches the same conclusion. After working very hard with council officers on this application for over 2 years, the recommendation for approval is maintained in the officer's report. And for our statement of common ground for the appeal, we agree with what the officer's report says on all matters. This application is 100% policy compliant and delivers new homes and infrastructure on a local plan housing allocation, and on that basis, it should be consented. The approach to enable the relief road to come forward for the site, if required in the future, has also been agreed with the council, and this application is not here to decide whether that road comes forward or not. Notably, as we mentioned, 212 homes come forward with the road. This means that if the application is consented tonight, it will significantly and strategically help the council and Kent Highways make a decision on whether the road comes forward, as it will provide clarity for the new local plan, and it will also strengthen the council's housing land supply position to help you stand up to speculative schemes on non-allocated housing sites. The proposals represent sustainable development in terms of national policy, and the application should be consented on this basis also. The scheme will create an attractive, sustainable new community in Sittingbourne, fully integrated for both new and existing residents to use and enjoy. Yes, this is an outline application, but we have gone above and beyond in all the detail that we have provided, including a design code. Therefore, the main benefits include signed head of terms with Tesco's. We want to deliver that store. 195k to restore the church. This is the only immediate solution. Funding for the bus service, quiet roads and other schemes. And we've gone above policy requirements in terms of environment, open space and affordable housing. No technical issues exist on the site in relation to design, highways, heritage and other matters, and we're keen to progress with the Section 106. Therefore, to close, we urge you to follow the recommendation of your planning officers and grant consent to the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask Glyn Middleton to speak, please? You have 3 minutes from when you start, and there'll be a 30-second warning. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm here this evening as a resident of Heron Fields. I'm not aware of the legal consequences, and I'm only here to express my opinion and my fellow residents' opinion of what this new development could do to us. The issues really surround the road infrastructure, and I think it's been touched upon. But the road network through Heron Fields is dire. It's been poorly constructed, and the thought of adding to the traffic is extremely concerning for all of us. My understanding is that, and I've said this before, the roads are so poorly made that they've been refused adoption by the council. Any access via Haffenden Avenue, Debenham Grove and Dean Close, even if only for emergency vehicles, would be dangerous given the narrowness of the roads and the poor quality. I'm not even sure why access is required, as these routes would not be needed given the primary route shown on the plans. Access is also going to likely cause financial hardship to the current Heronfield residents. We all pay towards the maintenance of the roads, and undoubtedly the cost would rise substantially if an extra 1,600 car journeys are made on them every day. This is a separate issue to the additional traffic that will be filtering through the part of town that has long since become a slow-moving car park, with some residents experiencing huge delays, any issues on the surrounding roads, and residents have reported up to 2 hours when travelling home from town, which is just not acceptable. Facilities, the amended plans, there is a suggestion, as you heard, that the residents could access shops elsewhere. We understand that there's a contract that's been signed with Tesco's, but we've seen these contracts before. We saw this on Heron Fields and we still haven't got a shop. In summary, the plan just doesn't work for the residents. The roads cannot take more cars, either structurally or by volume. The pollution levels are ever increasing. There are no shops planned. There are no additional facilities, there's nothing. Amongst other things, these issues have been raised previously, but seem to have been ignored and simply copied and pasted into the amended plans in no attempt to answer the underlying concerns. That's all I have to say, and thank you, and hope you come to the right decision.
Thank you, Mr. Middleton. And can I ask Councillor Townsend from Tenham Parish Council, please? You have 3 minutes from when you press the start button, and you'll have 30 seconds warning. Thank you. Please carry on.
Good evening. Thank you very much indeed. Tenham Parish Council objects to this application. In summary, our 3 principal objections remain: overdevelopment, impact on the road network, and impact on the local area. Some details. Overdevelopment. In September last year, your Swale Planning Policy Manager highlighted her concerns, stating that the policy MU2 referred to provision of approximately 106 dwellings on the site. The proposed application is up to 380, a significant increase. Number 2, impact on the road network. As others have said, this application will create a cul-de-sac. You've been asked to hedge your bets that the Northern Relief Road will be approved and constructed. Right now, that's not guaranteed. 380 houses, 700 cars, and plus service vehicles, that's around 2,000 vehicle movements a day, all using just one access. Even in the previous report, your planning officer had stated in the supporting pack, the resilience of the road network would be worsened in the scheme were one way in and one way out at the end of a very extended Swale Way. Imagine the school run. It only takes one double parked car, a broken down bus or roadworks, and access is blocked for everyone. Third and final, the impact on the local area. This site, as many of us will know, is surrounded by small rural country lanes that in many places are so narrow, two cars can't pass each other. It's highly likely that some residents will also use the schools and services at Tenham or beyond in Faversham. This will increase the traffic along Lower Road, which has multiple accidents, many near misses, and sadly a number of fatalities. In addition, Swale Borough Council are looking at creating a cycle route from Sittingbourne to Faversham. Increasing car traffic along here would defeat the purpose of sustainable transport along this route. In summary, Tenham Parish Council continues to object to this application. Our reasons remain overdevelopment, impact on the road network, and the impact on the local area. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any visiting members online who wish to speak? Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to reiterate, the original idea for this site was 106 houses, then become 380. But with the outline permission given a few minutes ago, that now goes to 394. No GP on this estate, no shop. Road struggling. Restrictions on bus routes. That's going to have a knock-on effect on all the surrounding villages and will force people into cars. That's not addressing our climate emergency plan whatever. Huge impact that this will have on the villages, particularly Tong. We've heard from Tenham and Batchild. I said about the GP services, there's none in Tenham. Not likely to be for quite some time either, from what we heard earlier today. So where are they all going to go? We're already stretched in the local NHS services, and there's nothing on this estate. It's already been spoken about the shop. I'd love to see it. Got no inclination it's actually going to happen. Maybe, as it's been mentioned, a contract or piece of paper doesn't mean it's going to be built. Main concerns, it's already been said about traffic, one way in, one way out, unless your emergency vehicle, which has got the separate access onto the roads into Tong. And you can, and I said this in January, you can bet your bottom dollar as much that when residents who start seeing that, if it's not blocked off to the for emergency vehicles only, some people are going to use it as a rat run. You've got more problems there on top of the Swale Way. It's questionable about the design, and you do need to look at that. It is going to be a potential rat race. Gentleman just already said that the size of this, it's not going to be he referred to it as a new community. That's exactly what it is. A new community within Sittingbourne, but no doctors, no shop. One way in, one way out. Residence costs, as a gentleman said, they're not adopted roads, so people are going to pay for that. And if I was a resident paying for roads, I would not be very impressed if having to pay out for extra repairs. And then the final part is the impact on Tong, West Tong Farm and St Giles's Church, impacting on huge importance of historical buildings and an area of historical significance and a conservation area. This development and application does nothing to secure those. Think very hard on your decisions tonight, please, committee members. It's going to have a lot of impact. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. I am going to issue the legal advice will now be issued. We will have 20 minutes for you to read it and consider it. And then there will be a vote on whether or not you wish to exclude the press and public. Or should we take the vote first? Okay, we'll take we'll take the vote when you've had a chance to read the legal advice. That will be issued now. That they are numbered and have to be handed back and cannot be taken out of this room.
Thank you, Chair. Just to explain the reasoning behind that, obviously the advice that's being handed out is the opinion of Mr. Mark Westmoreland Smith of Council, who's with me this evening. So he will be able to answer questions if you have any in closed session. The reason we're retaining the legal advice as confidential, it's being counted out and counted in, is because we're in an appeal situation and this legal advice and opinion may be something that we wish to use in our defence of the appeal. So it would prejudice the council's position, unfortunately, for the appellant. They might not like what I'm going to say, but if the appellant was able to read our council's opinion, there may be something in there that we will rely on in defending our appeal if you are minded to refuse this evening. And in the public inquiry arena, there are strict timetables set by the Planning Inspectorate for the exchange of statements of case, for the exchange of proofs of evidence, and so on and so forth. And if our defence and our case is out in the open before such a deadline, it gives the appellant the opportunity to respond to that and address that in their own submissions to the appeal. So it prejudices the council's position if the committee is minded to refuse this evening, and that's the position they would have taken. and we're going forward to defend an appeal. So we would ask you please to read the advice, don't share the advice, please don't allow that advice to leave this room, and please do hand that advice back to Billy when he's handing it around and you've finished reading it, for that simple reason. It's nothing sinister. It's simply to protect the council's position in the event that later this evening you are minded to refuse, and we need to rely on information in that opinion in defending our case at the appeal. Thank you.
Yeah, we can. Okay, take a. Councillor Hall? Councillor Hall?
Yeah. I had my hand up for some time. I'm wondering why I wasn't given the opportunity to speak in this.
Would you like to speak now, Councillor Hall?
I think I've lost it now.
Yeah, because as I explained earlier, if you speak as a ward member, you will not be able to take part, or as a visiting member. Can you explain to Councillor Hall?
Sorry, Councillor, we haven't actually moved the recommendation or anything yet. We've literally just concluded the public speaking. Chairman's advised that he's going to adjourn the meeting for hopefully a comfort break of a couple of minutes, and then for you to read the opinion, and then the meeting will reconvene. And at that point, there'll be a decision as to whether or not you feel the need to move into private session. And at that point, the chair will move the item, it will be seconded, and then the debate will commence either in public or in private, depending on what's been decided.
There'll be a 15-minute break. Come back at 10:02. Thank you. More time. If you do, just put your hand up. Okay, another 3 minutes. Okay, that is the end of the time. Okay, so you've seen the legal opinion now. I'm going to move the following motion to decide whether to pass the resolution set out below in respect of the following items. I move that under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 5, which reads, information in respect of which a claim to legal professional privilege could be maintained in legal proceedings. Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Booth. Those in favour, please indicate. Those against? And abstentions? Okay, that motion is carried. Can I ask that members of the press and public depart and that the online connection be amended accordingly? Visiting members may stay online or in the chamber, but cannot take any part in the discussion.